Hello everyone and welcome back to the Houdini online class. In this video we're finally going to be able to get away from all of the theory lectures we've been tossing your way for the last 3 or 4 videos and focus on Houdini. Now the best way to kick that off is a look at the Houdini user interface. Now we're going to be doing things a bit differently than our traditional approach to UI introductions. This time around we're not going to go menu option by menu option, button by button, and talk about the functionality of what everything does. It's going to take a lot of time if we did that, number one. Number two, it can be quite confusing. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to provide a very generalized overview of the UI, and then as we work deeper and deeper into the Houdini fundamentals class, we'll start getting into the specifics of what each button and menu option does. Now, Terry, I know you've got Houdini Apprentice installed on your machine. I saw you with it the other day.
Yeah.
About how much time do you have with it?
I'd say about 3 minutes, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the time it took to download and install it onto my machine,
okay,
and then I opened it and clicked some buttons to make sure it was working, and I didn't have any problems with drivers or anything, and that was it.
Okay.
Pretty much I closed it, and I just never touched it since.
Well, at least you're being honest. That's good.
I have not touched it at all.
I mean, I guess I really can't be expecting you to have modeled out a car or created some sort of cool dinosaur animation by now. I mean,
right, yeah.
It's not like we've really got that deep into Houdini so far. So it's working, and you're not yet familiar with this user interface.
No, not really. I mean, just because I know other 3D packages a little bit, I know what some of the stuff does, but other than that, I have no clue.
Okay, so that's going to work out really good. Now, like I said, you represent the students out there. So as I'm working my way through this, if anything seems to be confusing to you or I'm not very clear on something, please ask. I think that's very important here.
Okay, well, I got a question right now.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah. Why aren't we covering the UI like we traditionally do?
Well,
you stated that we're going to be going in detail later on.
Right.
Why don't we just show you everything, the buttons and stuff
in
right
the
now?
past, we've gone into detail with other applications because then I've always felt like that video will serve as a nice reference in case you want to go back and review it later after you have a better understanding of working in the application. Now, this may sound kind of odd, but I kind of look at all of the other 3D apps out there as linear applications.
Okay.
Houdini is very unique in the sense that while you're putting together your scenes, you can be working in different contexts. You might be working in a particle context, a geometry context, etc., right?
Right.
And based on what context you're in, the things that are surrounding you are going to be different. They're going to be specific for that context.
So the UI is going to be changing for the
So
context
UI will be
with.
changing. A viewer for working with particles or working with audio would be different than a viewer from working with geometry.
I got you.
As a quick example. And because of this and having different contexts and having the UI linked up in such a way that part of it will follow you into one context and another part of it will follow you in another context, and you may be working with 2 contexts at the same time, that quickly becomes confusing to those that are new to the workflow of Houdini, to how you work with the Houdini user interface.
I got you.
So by providing an overview, this is kind of like a framework overview of how the UI is glued together. With a solid understanding of that, and then as we start working with the basics of putting together really simple stuff inside of Houdini, we'll be able to slide into the specifics of the user interface, and I believe everybody's going to have a much easier time understanding, oh, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, as opposed to me trying to jump around and jump into all the different editors and viewers, etc.
Gotcha.
And quickly confusing people.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so as we start progressing through this, if at any point anything becomes confusing, ask. And make sure you pay close attention because I'm going to be asking you questions as well.
Yay!
Okay, so when we first launched Houdini 9.1, this is what we get. Of course, there's buttons, there's tabs, there's slider bars, there's a little bit of everything. And instead of walking around trying to give the general overview of what we're looking at right now with everything visible, I think it would be a lot easier if we strip Houdini down. So let's do that. Here's what I mean. So if I come in here, blink, and pull everything out, it's a lot easier to visualize what's going on because now we're not looking at all of these pretty icons and text, etc. And this will help us focus on the specific areas. Now, I want to start out by talking about a few areas that I'm not considering key elements to the overview of Houdini, or to the UI itself. So I just want to mention these. So we'll spend 30 seconds talking about them, then file them in the back of your head, and we'll come back to them in later videos. First of all, up here in the upper left-hand corner, what do we have? Menu bar. Almost all Windows applications have a menu bar. File, save, new, etc. All that good stuff located up under there. Most important, we do have the ability to get to help in here as well. All right, that's a horrible arrow.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. So anyways, menu bar. Now let's go ahead and slide on over to the right-hand side. Over here, we've got what's called take controls.
Okay.
And take controls are amazing. When you start working with takes, you can do some really neat stuff. And we're going to be doing that a little bit later on. But again, right now this serves no purpose in an overview of how the UI is all glued together.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that. Help. I want to point that out. Press this icon here, throw some help in there.
Right.
Because I feel everybody can jump in there and benefit from help while they're waiting
Always.
on the next video to come out. Or even if they're between videos and they're just confused about something they're exploring on their own. Don't be afraid to get help.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to get help.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get help.
So down here at the very bottom, this area here, is the status line. I feel the status line is extremely valuable to newcomers to Houdini. You can see right now the text that's in there is actually giving you some instructions. It's talking about left mouse tumbles, middle pans, the right dollies. So it's telling you how you can navigate around a viewport. You'll find that as you're using various tools and functions, actions inside of Houdini, that if you look down on the status line, you're going to find prompts telling you, or at least little clues telling you what you can do to utilize that tool. So very helpful. And then moving on over to the right of that, over here we've got cooking controls, and we'll talk more about cooking controls a little bit later on.
Okay.
Now, all of that out of the way. So our upper left, right, and then lower left and right corners. Now, let's focus on all of this stuff, right? So even though it looks like there's three different things, we're really just looking at two things right now. This area up here deals with shelves, okay?
Okay.
So let me just go ahead and jot in there, shelves. This area down here, this is our pane, or panes.
I got you.
I'm just going to write pane in here at the moment. So let's go ahead and kick off this overview with a discussion of panes.
Okay.
So panes are where you're going to be doing all of your work. Your actual work will be done inside of panes. Now there are somewhere between 18 and 23 different types of panes. I'm closer to 23. But panes break down into two different categories. We have editors and we have viewers. And you've seen a few already.
Right.
When you're working inside of your viewport, rotating around the scene, looking at the stuff that you've created, you're working in a viewer. That's a 3D viewer, okay, allowing you to see 3D things in the scene. When you're working in the network editor, and we've already seen glimpses of this in the past videos where we've seen our nodes tied together and you can visually see the nodes tied together.
Right.
But that's an editor. You can go in there and you can edit the node connections, etc., etc. But all of these reside in panes. So a pane is always of a specific type. It's rather an editor or it is a viewer.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and clear all this out and spend just a second talking about some of the different types of panes that you can find, and then we'll come back and focus on this big area and start talking about some of the things that you can do with it. So, pane examples. Take just a quick moment, break away from the UI, and let's see some of the types of panes that you will find inside of Houdini. Starting off with one of the most commonly recognized panes, our 3D viewer, what's known as the scene view. Here we are looking at what we would call a perspective viewport, and we see a crowd of happy balls that are watching a talented ball dive off a diving board and into an empty pool. Okay? Viewer, very important.
Very cool.
This is where you get to look into the virtual world in which you are creating animated objects. All right? Now, all of the different buttons and controls that you see inside here. Over here, we've got stuff over here, we've got stuff up here, we've got stuff here. All this stuff is relative to this particular pane. And what I'm getting at is as I introduce you to different types of panes, each of those panes have buttons and controls that are relative to that particular type. So the things that we find inside of this particular pane are things like, let me select, move, rotate my geometry or objects. Let me turn on snapping because I'm working inside the viewport and I need to snap stuff. Let me get some camera control going on so I can rotate around my screen. Let me come in here and render out a particular part of it. Let me control the kinds of things I see in the scene if I'd like to see, you know, points, normals, etc. But these things are all relative to this particular pane. Okay, does that make sense?
Right.
So this pane right here is a 3D viewer. So let's go ahead and clear all this out. So another pane that is a common pane that you will be working with inside of Houdini is one that will allow you to take nodes and tie those nodes together.
Okay.
Seeing Houdini is all about nodes, connecting the nodes into networks that produce some sort of meaningful result. So here we are, a network editor. So that now you've been introduced to a viewer and now an editor. Inside the network editor, well, what do we have? Nodes, and we can take those nodes and we can tie them together and we can create meaningful networks. Now, with nodes, we discussed earlier that each node has a set of parameters generally, and by tweaking the parameters, you're adjusting the way that node is going to operate on data that's coming into it or data that's being sent out of it. Well, we need some sort of editor that's going to allow us to get to the parameters that are located on each of these nodes. So if I wanted to go into this switch node and tell it which input I want it to let route through, I need to be able to get to a parameter editor. So we obviously have a pane that is a parameter editor. So with the parameter editor, I can select a particular node, and when that node's selected, I am visualizing all of the parameters for that node inside the parameter editor. Okay, so let's see, what else? Well, one of the things we're going to be doing with our 3D scenes is creating animations.
Right.
When creating animations, you generally lay down keyframes. That's one style of animation. And then interpolation is then, you know, basically used to get from one keyframe to the next, which means we now have animation curves that represent the interpolation that's taking place. Well, we're going to need to be able to go in there and modify these animation curves. Well, where are we going to do that? No better place than a channel editor. So here we are with a channel editor, again, another pane type that is showing us a bunch of translate and rotation animation curves, and we can go in here and we can grab handles and we can start tweaking those handles, or we can start changing the values of keyframes, etc., etc. But once again, all of the different things that you find inside of this pane are all what? Related to the channel editor. So it's all related to working with animation curves.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's go ahead and clear all that out. So what else? Well, I've said previously that when working in Houdini, you have the ability to work with audio files.
Right.
So when working with audio files, it would be nice to be able to visualize the waveforms of the audio files. So with motion and audio, we have our motion viewer. And here with the motion viewer, we're actually looking at a waveform that is being generated right now inside of Houdini when I snap this picture. Very cool stuff. Okay, so what else? Well, we saw that when working in Houdini with a scene that our file is organized in a hierarchical sense.
Right.
So, tree view. So here is a viewer that shows us our scene in that hierarchical fashion that we talked about in the last video. Okay, so we can see that here we are up at the root level. Let me find my pen real quick. There we go. So up at the root level, and then here we are up under object, and then inside a ball, and then here we are with all of our nodes that are being used for the ball asset in this particular case. So again, its specific purpose is for visualizing our scene or parts of the scene in a hierarchical fashion,
right.
Tree view. Okay, so let's go ahead and kill all that out. And let me just throw one more at you real quick.
Okay.
Help. Always important.
Oh, hey, cool.
We can also open up a help browser. That's another pane type that we have. And from inside a particular pane, we can use that as a reference as we're scripting something out or working with, you know, some sort of node inside of Houdini. We can have that help opened and available. So this is an example of what, 7 different pane types. And again, there's over 20 different panes available in Houdini. So, and we're not going to talk about all those right here. I just want to give you an example of some of the different types. So with an understanding of that, now let's go ahead and jump back to this. This area right here is going to represent one single pane. Now, in this pane, I could put any of the panes that I just showed you a second ago.
Right.
So I could put a giant viewer in here, and then with that viewer, I can say, you know, let's go ahead and show a 4 view so that I'm looking at a perspective view down here at the bottom, and then maybe a top view up here, a front view, however you want to lay it out. I mean, because you have that full control, side view over here. Or maybe instead of working with a viewer, a 3D viewer, maybe I just want to work with a text board. I'm just going to be doing some scripting, and I want to go in here, and the only thing I want to see available in this entire pane is just a text board. So if I want to, I have the ability to do that. But often, when working on files in Houdini and putting your scenes together, you're going to need to see multiple panes at the same time.
Right.
It would be nice to be able to see, like while working with a network editor, to be able to see a parameters editor at the same time so that you can quickly make adjustments to parameters as you select various nodes in the network editor. So we have the ability to split up our panes. So here is an example of dividing our panes up into 3 different panes. So you can say we've partitioned this into 3 panes. So you could say we've got 1, 2, 3. And the nice thing is, well, let's not actually do that. Let's go ahead and bring that back if I can. And there we go. And hang on one second, guys. That's what happens when I get a little bit carried away. Instead of going in here, and that's actually weird. It should not have done that. That's quite interesting. There we go. Instead of going in here and having just one visible pane, I can now say, let's put that hierarchical tree view over here.
Okay.
Maybe we'll put our 3D viewer over here, right, and switch it to a side view, and then down here in this area, let's put that channel editor. So now maybe if I had a bouncing ball that is bouncing along, down here I can see the actual animation curves for it, and I can tweak and adjust those. So this is an example of needing multiple panes to be visible at a given time while working on a file. So very handy stuff. Now, of course, we have the ability to customize this like crazy. I mean, like no end. I can come in here, and let's go ahead and see if this will actually let us undo this time. There we go. I can come in here and I can grab these splitter bars and I can drag them left and right. As a matter of fact, in the next video, instead of having a whiteboard up, we'll have Houdini up.
Okay.
And we'll start dragging this all around. So it'll make a lot more sense when you actually see it. But we can drag these around to resize any of these panes. So if I want to make this pane over here a little bit larger, I could just simply take and drag this over. Of course, it's going to shrink this pane and this pane, right? But I'll get a larger pane on the right-hand side. Now, I can organize these in any way I'd like. So this is one way. And I can come in here and say, you know what? Now let's take this pane over here on the right and let's split it like this. And then maybe this pane over here on the bottom, let's split it down like this. And then I could even go as far as to say, and let's split the pane this way as well, top to bottom. Okay, so now I can come in here and maybe put some sort of 3D viewer here, parameters here, network over here, something I need a lot of space for up here. Maybe I'm working with some MIDI stuff and I want to see some of the waveforms coming in, so I can put a motion viewer up there. A lot of power. Now let's go ahead and switch over to something that looks a bit more familiar. Bink. How about that?
Hey, cool.
So here we are looking at the pane layout we're presented with when we first launch Houdini. As a matter of fact, if I bring back this guy, look carefully, look familiar, you can actually see that pane layout there. So with this in mind, what I'd like to do is start focusing now on the panes that are positioned in each of these pane locations when you first launch Houdini. So starting over here in the big area, we have what? A viewer, a 3D viewer.
Viewport.
That's right, the viewport. So let's go ahead and come over here, and I would like to bring this in and bring in a viewport pane. So here we are. Again, a pane. Now every pane, and then we've seen panes are viewers, editors of all sorts of different types. Every pane has a pane tab. We can hide these tabs if we'd like. So there's its tab. Now what's the convenient thing about a tab? Well, check this out. We have the ability to stack panes on top of one another. So in this large area that I've got right here, this area, I can actually stack multiple panes. So let's say that I have 3 different panes that I'm working with, but I don't need to see them at the exact same time. But I need to be able to get to them quickly. I could stack them in this particular partition. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Keep an eye right here, okay? And let me go ahead and close this back up. Things being just a little bit funky over here. And boom, look at that.
Oh, nice.
So now we've got another pane tab, and yet another pane tab. So now I can simply click or use hotkeys to switch between these different pane tabs to gain quick access to a channel editor, a render view, or the composite view. Okay, but once again, they're kind of stacked on each other over here on the left-hand side.
Right.
Now, while working in my scene with this default layout, I need to be able to see my network pane. And we know that the network is located down over here, right? So what I'd like to do is go ahead and bring in the network pane. Now, of course, it's over here that we'll start creating things like we've got a node tied to a node, and maybe this guy splits off to 2 other nodes or whatever, right?
Right.
But we also have the ability to stack more panes in here as well. So by default, we get not only our network editor, but we also get a tree view and a material palette. Okay? So by clicking on these different pane tabs, we can switch between different panes in this particular partition. All right? Now let's go and turn our attention up here to this guy, where we'll have our parameter editor by default. So let's go ahead and bring in the parameter pane, and there it is. Now once again, I'm just demonstrating a single pane up here, but boom, look at that. We also have a take list pane that comes in when we open up Houdini by default. Now you've seen that with these panes, we can rearrange them, we can control what pane is where very easily. Once we get things configured the way we like, we can save the UI state as a particular desktop. So think about yourself sitting down at your desk to work, and you organize everything in a very specific way. You do a lot of editing.
Yeah.
So let's say you organize your mics over here, your, well, whatever. You know, I'm just making stuff up.
Very specific way.
But you have a very specific way of working. Let's say that now you're not going to be doing editing, but you're going to be doing 3D work. So now you're going to rearrange your desk for doing 3D type work.
Right.
Well, you have the ability to rearrange your user interface here and save it as different desktops.
I gotcha.
Now, there are a handful of desktops that are predefined when you come into Houdini. The default one that Houdini launches demonstrating or showing is the build desktop.
Okay.
A little bit later on, I'm going to show you how we can create our own custom desktops.
Cool.
So I just want you to keep in mind that as I'm showing how we can rearrange and put all these different panes in here, and you have full control of how they're laid out on the viewport, in the UI itself, you can save these states as different desktops. Okay?
Very cool.
How are we doing so far? All the pane stuff makes sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I do have a question, though. Can you, I noticed that it says object tree view and material palette down there, and the network pane down there. So you can change the tree view and everything to different panes, obviously.
So you mean if I want to, let me make sure I understand you. So if I didn't want this pane tab to be a tree view, but instead wanted it to be another scene view, could I change it from the tree view to a scene view?
Well, that was the question I was going to ask. Does the network pane and the parameters pane have a set default? Can you change it to a viewer? Can you have any type of view down there?
I can have anything that I'd like down here. So let's say that this guy right here, I did not want him to be a network editor.
Okay.
Because I didn't want a network pane right here. I can simply change this pane, so we're talking about this pane tab, to another scene view, for instance.
Okay.
And then I would be looking at what I see over here. I'd see basically the same type of thing down here. They're not linked together. This is pretty cool, meaning that I can rotate this view around so that I'm panning the view. So I'm panning, and then I'm rotating, I'm tumbling around, and it's not going to be doing that over here. So I could be looking at my scene from one perspective here and a different perspective over here, just as a real quick example, if I'd like. I could also perhaps change this right here, this particular pane. So we're talking about this guy right here. So we're not talking about adding in a new pane tab, but just change this pane over to a network editor. So then I could have a network editor focused on one specific area here and one that's focused on one specific area there. And we will play with all of that in the next video, just so we can have some fun with it. You can ask questions and I can shift things around as you're asking those questions.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we have complete control to how many pane tabs we have. So even though we've got 4 in this left-hand area, I can add a 5th, a 6th, a 7th,
nice.
And all of that is done from right here, okay? So here we go once again with Photoshop acting just a little bit funky on us. There we go. So I can continue to add those, and I can control what every single tab is showing.
Very nice.
So all because a particular Pane tab says channel editor. That doesn't mean I'm locked into that having to be a channel editor. I can just right click on this and change this over to a different type of Pane. Complete control. Okay?
Very cool.
All right, so that is a discussion of panes. Now you start to see what I was talking about when I said I'm going to give a generalized overview of the
definitely.
UI.
Yes.
So now, even though you don't know yet how Houdini functions in regards to really hooking up nodes and adjusting things to get meaningful output, you now know what panes are.
Yeah.
Panes are very important.
Yes.
So the next thing I want to focus on is going to be my shelves.
Okay.
So a lot of different shelves available in Houdini by default. Now we've got our shelf area, so I'm just going to call from here all the way on over my shelf area. Right now it is divided into two partitions. A partition holds what is known as a shelf set.
Okay.
A shelf set is generally multiple shelves. Okay, might sound a little confusing. Bear with me, it's going to make a lot of sense in just a minute. So let's start out by focusing on what I'll just call partition number one, this guy over here. By default, partition number one is going to contain what I'm just going to start out by calling my create shelf.
Okay.
So let me bring up a create shelf for you. So come over here. There's my create shelf. I can create some primitives, a box, a sphere, a tube, a grid, and then there's metaballs, L systems. There's all sorts of stuff that I can create, even text that we can do inside here. So create focuses on the creation of things.
I got you.
Now, let's talk just for a second before we get too deep into the world of shelves. What is found on a shelf? Well, icons, buttons. And you click those buttons, and what happens? Well, when you click a button, some sort of functionality is going to take place. Basically, internally, you are running a Python script. And this Python script is going to create nodes or do some sort of action inside of Houdini. Okay? And then an example. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. If I want to create a sphere, the old-fashioned way would be to hit the tab button and slap down a geometry node, or come over here and hit tab, slap down a geometry node, and then go into the geometry node, delete out the file node that's there by default, and create a sphere node. And now we have a sphere. A lot of action just to get a sphere in my scene.
Right.
Now it's been simplified greatly. Guess what? Click the sphere button, click where I want it. Or it's even faster if you want to just at the center of the world, hold control down, click the sphere button, done. Okay, what did that do? It created my geometry node, and inside that it created my sphere node. So you have the ability, this is really nice, to go in here and create your own shelf icons, your own custom shelf buttons that will perform some sort of functionality. May it be creating nodes or something else. Just need to get a little comfortable with writing some Python scripts, which we're going to be getting into a little bit later on. All right, so now that we know that what is on the shelf is a series of buttons that just provides access to some sort of functionality in Houdini, let's kind of take a step away and focus on shelves as a whole again. So here we are with a shelf, the create shelf, but in this partition, the partition contains a shelf set. So once again, over here is a shelf set. That generally means multiple shelves. We're looking at one shelf right now, the create shelf. Let me go ahead and show you a full shelf set. So by default, what comes in is that. So on the left-hand side, we have the ability to create and modify or deform geometry, and we also have some texture control. Okay, so we can put down some UV coordinates, etc., and we also have some character-related stuff as well. Okay, so that's what we have on the left-hand side. So what do we have available in the partition on the right-hand side? Again, what does the partition contain, Terry?
It contains a set.
A shelf set. Excellent. Good job. So it contains a shelf set. The first one that you're going to see by default is going to be our lights and camera shelf. So let's go ahead and bring it in.
Okay.
So now I have the ability to quickly create a point light, a spotlight, an area light, or how about I want to come over here and create a camera or a switcher so I can switch between cameras, right? Have all of those abilities right there, ready for me to access quickly, okay? But this particular partition, that contains a shelf set focuses on the creation of lights, cameras, and systems, as I like to call it. What do I mean by systems? Well, let's go ahead and bring it in. Particle systems, rigid body systems, talking about some dynamic action, fluids, cloths, wires, etc. So again, lights, cameras, and systems. Now, we have the ability to add more shelf sets. As we add more shelf sets, we continue to partition our shelf. So we could end up having more sets of shelves in there.
I gotcha.
We can add shelves. So if we want, let me go ahead and remove all this stuff here. If we want to add another shelf over here to this shelf set, we have that ability.
Okay.
We can even download shelves from the Houdini Exchange, and that's built into Houdini. So I can just go in there and say, download shelf, and it'll bring up Houdini Exchange showing you what shelves are available for you to download, which is very cool, as you said.
Yeah.
Okay. We can also use this splitter bar in the center to control the spacing on how much is available on each shelf. Right now, of course, it's just split down the center, but maybe I want to see more of the shelf set on the right-hand side, so I can quickly just take and drag to the left.
I gotcha.
Okay. So, any questions about this?
Yeah, is there a limit to the amount of shelves you could put up there? Shelves and shelf sets.
Okay, you can keep
both. Yeah.
As for the limit to the number of shelves, that's a really good question that I don't honestly know an answer for. I mean, you would think that with a computer, there's always some sort of limit,
granted,
right?
Yeah.
But shelf sets, think about it. Each time you add a shelf set, what's going to happen? You're going to get a splitter bar, and then your new shelf set will appear.
Right.
Well, basically, I think it's about 2 icons that are always going to show if you take the splitter bar and you start squeezing the shelf.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because it's going to start hiding everything behind it as the splitter bar moves over until you get to about 2 icons, and then it stops there. And you can't drag it anymore.
It tries to give you a general idea what's on the shelf, so you won't have it.
Exactly. So it shows you a little bit.
Yeah.
So because of that, there's only so many shelf sets that you're going to be able to put up here in the shelf region before you just can't fit anymore because you can't divide it anymore.
Right.
But I'll be honest, I have not gone in there and tried to add tons of shelf sets. 2 shelf sets. I think this is really a nice layout right now because, again, if I'm going to create or deform something, I quickly look over here. If I'm working with systems, lights, or cameras, I quickly look over here.
And it also probably depends on the resolution you're running at, too.
Absolutely. And, of course, we are running at a much smaller resolution than normal.
Right.
Any more questions about...
No, that totally makes sense. Oh, yeah, actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
Can you rip the shelves off?
Ooh.
Can you take them off and put them somewhere else within Houdini?
All right. So let's talk about that real quick. Okay. We do have the ability to hide them by clicking over here. Or, now this one's kind of trippy, we can also take a shelf set, well, take the entire shelf. And when I say shelf, I'm referring to all shelf sets, okay? So this entire region, okay? We can move,
even with the divide in the center?
Yep, that's the shelf, the whole shelf. We can take that and we can move it down into any pane.
Oh, okay, I got
So I could say take that entire shelf and move this whole thing down into my scene view, into my 3D viewer, and so the shelf set would appear right up in here. Everything would be pushed down a little bit, and then all of this area would clear out and go away.
Oh, okay.
And then I could, of course, put the shelf back. So that's really interesting because you have the ability to move your shelf down there. You can move your main menu bar into panes. You can move what we're going to be talking about shortly, our animation bar, into panes as well. So you can like make a mini Houdini in one pane and then have these other panes with other editors or viewers. Yeah, it's really interesting. So to answer your question, yes, we can move them. We cannot tear them off, as you first mentioned. I think you said, can you tear them off?
Right.
No, you can just move them into other panes.
Okay, so it can't be like a floating window.
No, it's not like a floating window. Okay. So good?
Yeah, and well, I'm going to jump real back a bit because that just brought up another question. The shelf can't be a floating window, but can you make the panes floating windows?
Ooh, excellent question.
Because I have a dual monitor setup, and it'd be nice to have the viewports on the side and working everything else.
Yep, we're going to be demonstrating in the next video. Basically, you've got 3 very helpful buttons when working inside of any pane. Add new pane tabs or switch between pane tabs that are available because you don't want to click on a tab button.
Yeah.
Maximize that whole pane.
Right.
Or manage our panes. Inside the manage panes, one of the things is tear off a copy or just tear off the pane.
Oh, cool. So you could still leave it docked.
I could leave it docked and tear off a copy and drag it over to my second monitor. If I want.
Cool.
So it is very handy. And I'll demonstrate some of that in the next video.
Yeah.
All right, so feeling pretty good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that covers panes. That covers shelves.
Right.
So when referring to shelves, we're talking about shelf sets. And on shelf sets, or in a shelf set, we can have multiple shelves, and each shelf has a shelf tab, okay? Right. All right, next area that I want to spend just a second and talk about, little lonely area down here. I want you guys to think I forgot about this. This right here contains our animation bar. So let's go ahead and bring that in.
Oh, okay.
Animation bar is going to give us access to our timeline. So we got a time slider right here, so we can see what frame we're on. We have transport controls over here so that we can go in here and we can play, stop, rewind back to the beginning, jump to the end. We can play in reverse. Over here, auto key, real time control, animation parameters, etc. Just a bunch of animation related items, okay? So basically, animation bar, and again, this guy can be ripped off and put into any pane. Can't have it in multiple panes at the same time, but it can be moved to any pane. Whew. All right, Terry, with that, that is a pretty solid trip around the whole user interface. Again, it's very important, and I do believe, let's go ahead and go back to the original picture. Hey, almost nothing changed. Look at that, just a tad. So going from the original picture, I mean, the big thing to keep in mind right here, just strip it all down, and what are you looking at? You're simply looking at, for the most part, you're looking at your shelves, panes, and an animation bar. Okay, of course, you've got your menu bar, and you've got your status line at the bottom. But the key things here, the key things that you're going to be working in for the most part is going to be your panes. Okay, so that is the big thing that I wanted you guys to get a solid understanding of. And each pane can, well, be of a different type. And again, the two categories, we've got editors and we've got viewers. And I gave a quick demonstration of about seven different types of panes. All right. You got a kind of weird look on your face.
No, it was a look of awesomeness. Is what that was. No, I was just thinking that Houdini is essentially 100% customizable.
It's very customizable.
Because,
absolutely.
You know, if you can go in there and, like, for instance, in the main menu bar, you can take that and put that down somewhere else. Yeah. If you can do that, then that is 100%.
Yeah, that's something you're not used to seeing in other applications.
At all. No, that was very cool.
And the fact that you can then, after configuring the way you like to work, you can then save that as a desktop and come back to it at any time is just, it's beautiful.
That's amazing.
It's good
very
stuff.
Cool.
Okay, so did I do a good job of taking you through the UI without telling you pretty much what one thing does?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, oh, I know what everything does, but I'm still very confused on how to use it. So very nice.
All right,
I like it a lot.
Top area, what's it called? Here's the quiz. What's this called?
Oh, the main menu bar?
All right.
The title bar. Which one are you pointing at?
the menu bar.
Okay.
You said both, so you get credit.
Okay.
All right, do you remember what this section was called over here?
That was the take something.
Take controls.
Take controls. Okay. I have no idea what the take
very
controls
good.
are.
We'll come back to those later, though. Down here on the very bottom, this area?
Was that the help one?
The status line.
Oh, the status line. Okay, sorry.
Over here? No, that's okay, because these, remember I said shove them to the back of your head.
And which I apparently did.
This over here?
That's
cooking controls.
Cooking controls.
Okay.
Okay.
And now, well, in Houdini, it's just like when we were working with the recipes and we were cooking.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
When data propagates through a network, we're cooking it.
You're absolutely right. And now that you have said that, I know what auto update means now.
It's automatically going to cook for you.
Yay. See,
how cool is it if you're standing in the kitchen and you're mixing peanut butter in, you decide, I wonder what this tastes like without peanut butter. You take peanut butter out and the thing automatically cooks itself.
Oh, that would be glorious.
And there's the result. Yes, it would be. All right, these things I was going to give you a break on if you missed. Now, the next questions, I will not. So, what's this area called?
That would be the shelves.
Okay, the shelves. How's the shelves divided up? What
shelves are divided up into panels, or excuse me, I'm sorry, shelf sets.
Shelf sets.
Right.
So in this partition,
the partition of the shelves. Yes.
So in that partition we have a shelf set, and in this partition we have a shelf set.
That's right.
Okay, very good. And these icons that are on a shelf, what's their purpose?
Whatever the icon says it's going to do is what it does. They're going
perform some sort of functionality.
Right, a Python script.
Okay,
and slap it in there. See, I'm paying attention.
So yes, you click one of these buttons, a Python script does get executed, and some sort of functionality is carried out for you.
That's right.
Okay, very good.
I didn't say it that eloquently, but that's what I was trying to say.
And you can add shelves into a shelf set, and you can create entirely new shelf sets.
And you can take your shelves and you can move them to any pane within the window.
Very good. Which brings us to the next area. These are called what?
The panes.
Panes break down into how many different categories?
Wow.
Pane types?
Oh, excuse me. View and edit.
So viewers and editors.
That's
okay,
right.
Very good. And right now, how many panes do we have visible?
You have 3 visible.
Okay, and how many do we have?
Wait.
How many do we have that are not visible right now?
Well, that aren't. Oh, the tabs. Okay, is that what 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
We have 9 that are not visible.
Oh man. Okay, 9 minus 3.
Oh, very good. So what is 9 minus
6.
3? And it was funny, guys, because right before this video, Terry actually said, "Please tell me we're not going to do any math in this video."
I've had a long night.
So we've got 6 right now, 6 panes that are not visible, and you are correct. We've got 3 that are visible, that making a total of how many panes do we actually have right now that we can get to?
9.
9. Absolutely. All right, very good. So, and we saw that we can customize these just about any way you can imagine, and we'll take a quick look at that in the next video. Now, dropping down below that, this whole area was known as the...
Oh, that's the animation. Well, it's the animation
the whole
bar thing.
The animation bar.
Yeah.
Very good.
I kept trying to say timeline.
Okay, but the animation bar, which contains a timeline.
I have a quick question. I'm going to jump right in here real quick.
Okay.
You were saying how you could divide up the panes, right?
Yes.
Any way, shape, or form. Can you draw out where you're going to make the divide at?
Draw out?
Yeah, like for instance, if you guys can't see, but I'm going to be pointing. If it could draw straight down and then take a left right there in the center of a main pane right there, can it?
Basically, here's my options.
Okay.
I can say let's say I'm working in this pane right now, right? I can say split the pane top bottom. That's split top bottom.
Oh, we'll always do exactly by half?
Yep.
Ah, okay.
Or I could say split the pane left right.
Okay, so you can't just make it 3/4 of the pane
After it's done, you can then go in here and grab this and slide it down to give yourself more room up top if we need it to do that for some particular reason, like that.
Okay, cool.
Okay?
Yeah.
But you can't go in there and draw out panes, if you will. All right? Well, if you can, I've never seen it anyways. All right, let's see. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it for me.
Okay, so once again, ladies and gentlemen, this was just a very generalized overview with a primary focus on panes and shelves for the Houdini 9.1 user interface. Terry, thank you very much. And with that is going to wrap up this video.